Good morning. It is June 2nd, 2024. This is episode 186 of the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast, a podcast by a dreamer for all you dreamers out there. Stand-up comedian and actor Paul Green here. And I am coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada this morning. Although I will not be here much longer. I will be heading back down to Phoenix. And I will be doing that so that I can host my double open mic this evening in downtown Mesa at the NCT Comedy Theater, your neighborhood comedy theater. So, very much looking forward to that. So, let's get the update happening. So, last night, I had the second performance at the Notoriety Live Theater in downtown Las Vegas. And overall, I thought the show went very well. It was interesting. We had more people than we had Friday night, which was good. However, this time nobody sat in the front row, which was interesting. So, I may have described the theater a couple podcasts ago, but so the actual venue is an old, or is like not old, but like a transformed movie theater. So the theater itself is that sort of kind of stadium style seating, and what they had done is they just converted this movie theater into a like a live performance venue, and it's very nice. It's definitely newer, and I would say newer, probably maybe 10 or 15 years old. Don't quote me on that, but I mean, it doesn't look like an old movie theater, and even the stadium style seating, I think, is a fairly newer idea. I remember the first time I ever saw a movie theater like that was like in high school, like in the late 90s, when they started building these sort of newer modern movie theaters that would have, those stadium seats that would, each row would be higher than the one before it. Whereas before that, movie theaters, pretty much all of the seats were just all at ground level. So anyway, they had that stadium style seating, and then there was probably about 10 to 15 feet from the front row of the stadium seating till the stage. And so then right in front of the stage, they had just set up some round tables with chairs, and kind of smaller. There was maybe just 4 chairs per table, and there was maybe 6 or 7 tables. So, a little bit of a unique layout for a stand-up comedy show, but still really great. The stage was really big, had nice like big LED screens and nice lighting. I mean, everything was really nice. So Friday night, we actually had a handful of people sitting in that very front row in the tables and chairs. Last night, for some reason, nobody sat in those tables and chairs. So the first people were in the first row of the stadium style seating, and there was really only like one person in that row. And then they were kind of scattered as you started to go up the rows there. So, which was fine. The audience they were pretty energetic. They were happy to be there, gave good energy. Now, as always is going to be the case in a situation like that, again, I saw the seat capacity actually is 300. So, you know, there was maybe 30 people there. So anytime you have a much bigger venue and a much smaller audience relative to the seating capacity, it is just a bit of a challenge to get a certain energy going, especially when the venue is really large. I mean, it is a massive venue, super high ceilings, 300 seat stadium style seating, and then you've got like 30 people sort of scattered throughout the first 5 or 6 rows. It's just a different energy. Whereas if those 30 people were in a smaller venue, it would be much different. It would be still a better atmosphere. Not that it was a bad atmosphere. I'm not trying to say it was like bad or horrible, but it's just a situation to where there's this massive space, and then relative to the space, there isn't as many people filling that space as would be ideal. So, it just makes it a little bit more challenging to get, a good, intimate, high energy, rolling laughter atmosphere. It's like laughs dissipate really fast. Laughs get lost in all of the space really fast. Like even when I was walking on, even when this happened for every comedian, even when the comedians are walking on stage and they're coming from backstage, once they get announced and walking to the microphone, like the applause dies out before you even get to the microphone, So they'll clap and cheer, and they are good. Like they're happy to be there. They're, whatever, but the energy just dies a lot faster. And so, even when I came on stage, it's like by the time I got to the mic, it was pretty much silent. And, every joke that I would say would, like they would laugh, but then it would die. And then they would laugh, and then it would die. So it's just a little bit more of a challenging situation and circumstance to do comedy. There are worse circumstances, though. Believe me. And the audience they came to see comedy, so, they were happy to be there and still good. But anyway, enough about that. So one of the things that I really wanted to accomplish this weekend was getting quality footage of me doing some crowd interactions. So I brought my keyboard and I had 20 minutes. So I would spend about half the time doing material, and then I would do the other half doing my token, interviewing people in the audience and then improvising a song about them. And the venue had this videographer that they use regularly, and he was really excited to help out with this. Unfortunately, on the first night, I guess a bunch of stuff happened with his camera, and he wasn't able to get the footage, so that was kind of frustrating, but I get it. Stuff happens. And so I had him come out again last night to film everything. Now, one of the big challenges, because nobody was in that front row, by the time you got to the stadium seating, it was really dark. They didn't have any lights on in the audience. And so I started talking to this couple who was in the second row of the stadium seating. So they're like 20 feet away from me, from the stage, and pretty much in the dark. And so I asked the guy, like, hey, were you able to even get any footage of them? Because, it was pretty dark out there. So he said he tried, but I'll have to see how that footage turns out. But I was hoping to have 2 videos of crowd interactions at a different venue. But that may not be the case. So I'll have to see how that all pans out, how it all turns out. But overall, my set went well. I am really trying to hone in on this new material. I think it went well. I mean, it's hard to know because it's it's really hard to like totally kill in a room or in that sort of environment, to where, again, everything's kind of scattered out. You've got only maybe 30 people. I did get a little self-conscious. I caught myself being a little less sure of my delivery. When you're 20 feet away from the first person, it's a lot harder to really like connect. You can't see them. And so I really just had to just deliver this material into the microphone and, hope that it landed. And then also, again, the energy would dissipate really quickly. So, I got in my head a little bit about that and tried to just surge forward and, just deliver what I've been working on these last couple of months. If this is your first time joining me, I made a conscious decision about 2 months ago to start over from the beginning and pretty much write a whole brand new act, and to just be a lot more meticulous with my written material, which is not really something that I've done before. I've always been a lot more reliant and leaned on my improv experience, my acting background, to really carry me through stand-up performances, and then my material was always a little more secondary. And I am trying to challenge that and trying to establish a better habit of writing material that is killer material and that I can deliver over and over and over again and always do well with it, and getting more meticulous with what works and what doesn't work, and how specifically am I going to set up a joke, and where is the laugh lines, and if something isn't getting a big laugh, then getting rid of it, and just being a lot more willing to let go of jokes that just aren't working as well, or act outs that don't hit as hard or whatever. And so it's been a journey to sort of shift gears into that mindset of, no, I'm really going to start writing a lot more meticulously, and being and just really raising the standard of what material I'm going to let make it into the final act. And of course, a lot of that means just writing a bunch of material and then trying out a bunch of different material, and then just being willing to let go of stuff that just doesn't seem to be hitting as hard. So even the act I did last night, which I did about 12 minutes of material, but I've probably, some of that material even within the 2 months, I've iterated on multiple times. Added stuff, cut stuff, moved stuff around, really finding what parts of it actually hit harder. And if something hits harder, then, I'll move it to the front of the bit. And if something isn't hitting hard, I either try it somewhere else, or I try editing it, or just gotten rid of it. And I've already gotten rid of whole bits that I was trying out, but just for some reason just didn't quite seem to resonate with the audience. It's been interesting because I'm also finding that, how do I word this? So there's always this talk about, well, when you do comedy, when you do art, you have to be vulnerable, you have to be authentic. But as a comedian, it's like we also want to be funny. And there is such a thing as being too vulnerable and too authentic. Because yes, the audience wants that authenticity, but they also want to feel safe with you. And they also want to feel like you're okay. And it is not uncommon to maybe go a little too far as a comedian with the truth of your life and your opinions. And I think the problem with that is then it doesn't become a performance anymore. It becomes a therapy session, and that can be a fine line. And that is the challenge and opportunity of a comedian, which is, how can I be authentic with what I'm thinking and with what I'm feeling and with who I am, but then also package that in a presentation that audiences feel safe engaging with and laughing at, and potentially laughing really, really hard at. And I think the challenge can be, and I've done this myself, and I've seen plenty of other comedians sort of fall into this trap, which is, you're just up there telling, maybe some pretty tragic stories, or, expressing some maybe strong, unpopular opinions to try to be salacious, or to try to be, I don't know, trying to be edgy, or trying to be like unique or whatever. And it's like, hey, more power to you if that's what you want to do. But more and more as I do this, I see that can be a real challenge when a comedian is up there just being a little too close to the chest, a little too authentic, a little too vulnerable. It can actually make the audience uncomfortable, or it can make the audience laugh out of sympathy, or it can make the audience laugh out of pity, or it can just make the audience laugh out of discomfort. And so it can be a bit of a false positive, because maybe the comedian hears, oh, they're laughing, look at, I'm being funny, but really the audience is going, oh my gosh, I'm uncomfortable. And that's not funny. I feel sorry for that guy. So that's also something that I've had to really look at, because I had written a bunch of material last year, and I think it was probably leaning a little too close to being a little too close to the chest. And, I've really tried to pull back on my material a little bit and try to find that part of my, that part of my personality, that part of my experience, that part of my opinion that's still very authentic, still very much who I am, but that is coming from a place that isn't, I don't know, that just isn't too personal, or isn't coming from a place of, pain that is unresolved. And so then again, it just feels like a therapy session, and then the audience is just kind of there listening to me, vent about life, in a way that that the audience doesn't feel safe just totally being on board with and just laughing at and having a good time with. And then there's such a thing as going too far the other way, to where, you're up there just talking about stuff that doesn't have any teeth to it, or doesn't have any real emotional backing to it. And then the audience just kind of like, oh, well, to the point to where it almost feels inauthentic, to where it just feels like the comedian's just up there just trying to be goofy, or just trying to be slapsticky or whatever. So, that's why it's a craft. That's why you have to hone the craft. That's why it takes years and years and years of trying as many different jokes, as many different bits, as many different approaches and personas, and really trying to find that sweet spot between authenticity and between performance. Because the flip side of being a performer is you are putting on an act. It is an act. It is a show. It's showtime. And, you know, you have to go put on a show. It's not, oh, well, this is what I think and feel right now. And what I think and feel right now is super depressed and unhappy. And so now I'm just going to go on stage and be depressed, unhappy. And who cares if the audience laughs or not? It's going, well, good luck with that. You're a stand-up comedian, which means the intent is that you're going to walk on stage and elicit laughter from an audience of predominantly strangers. So overall, I feel like I'm finding that balance between authenticity and still putting on a show, still putting on a performance. And if I'm learning one thing, it's that will probably, I think that that's the journey and it's not a destination, meaning I will always be trying to find that balance between authenticity and performance and trying to hone that in and hone the craft and hone the material. And from what I understand, that is what I've signed up for until I die. This is till death do us part, me and comedy, because what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing is the same thing that Steve Martin talked about in his documentary now, as he's, you know, teaming up with Martin Short and trying to write jokes, and they're just going back and forth and trying to figure out what jokes work, what jokes do they think are funny, what jokes do they think aren't funny, writing a ton of jokes and then throwing out a bunch of them until they land on the best material for that show. And that's the journey. That's what it is. And it's just never ending. I remember attending this workshop once with one of the world's best piano players. It's a gentleman named Kenny Warner. Anybody who's into jazz music, you might know that name. But again, like a world-renowned jazz pianist. And I remember sitting in this workshop. I don't think I was there in person. I think I was watching it, maybe on YouTube or something. But anyway, I always loved this piano player's music. And this guy's probably in his 60s by now or 70s. And again, arguably one of the best jazz piano players in the world. And in this workshop, he was just talking about how, you know, the other day he was practicing and he was trying to like nail this like sort of new concept or whatever. I know that's very vague. I don't remember the specifics of what he's talking about. And of course he's talking about like super complex jazz music, you know, terminology and artistic approach and all this stuff. And I just remember going like, man, this guy is one of the greatest in the world. And what he's talking about is him practicing and honing his craft even further. Whereas, you know, there's less than a percent of the world who could even pull off what this guy can do on a piano. I saw him live once, and it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. So that is just something I always keep in mind, is that I will always be in a state of refinement and in a state of an improvement and in a state of creation and in a state of honing the craft, and might as well just get used to it, because that's never going to change. And that's the life. That is the journey of any dreamer, any performer, any artist, whatever your dream is, whether that's being an entrepreneur, whether it's being an artist, whether it's being a family person, whether it's being, I mean, even if your job is, hey, you know, I want a 9-to-5 and I want to, you know, really crush it in my career. I think we have a tendency maybe to like look down on that as a life path. I don't at all. I'm going, yeah, if that's where you get joy and fulfillment, is to being able to have like a steady job and a steady income and crushing it at work, and then, like, great. There's always going to be a state of improvement and honing your craft and honing your skill set and becoming a better employee and a better teammate and a better, co-worker, a better family person, a better partner, a better parent, spouse, family member, whatever it is. Life is a constant state of improving and honing and just striving to become whatever it is that is calling to you in your heart, and learning to just relish and enjoy the process and the journey, because as I am finding, it's all process and it's all journey, and that is becoming more and more exciting to me, whereas maybe before that was something that seemed a little daunting. So anyway, I'm sort of waxing vaguely philosophical here to wrap up today's podcast, but overall, I had an excellent time in Las Vegas. So grateful to my boy Andrew Norelli, who hooked me up with this gig, and the booker, Phil. And I cannot think of his last name right now, and I feel really bad about that. But he was the actual booker who put me on the gig, and had a great time performing with very funny comics, Haley, Trevor, and Kitty, and Matt Balaker. So really fun show, really fun time. Enjoyed my time in Vegas. Looking forward to getting back to Phoenix, doing my open mics today, and I'm going to try a bunch of new material, speaking of honing, and see what I can do about starting to flesh out this act a little more. I've got about 12 minutes now of new material that seems to be working pretty well, and ultimately I want to get to an hour. So it took me about 2 months to get to where I'm feeling pretty good about this 12 minutes. So if I need another 50, let's do the math. I got about another 10 months to get to an hour. If it all takes about as long as it's taking. So we'll see how that all goes. All right, everybody. I'm going to sign off for now, but this has been June 2nd, 2024, episode 186 of the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. I love you all so much. Thank you for listening, and I will check in with you tomorrow.